No kids, no future. Shakers, Episcopalians. Now, we know it's more complicated than that, although I'm tempted to affirm and promote procreation as the eighth principle in Unitarian Universalism. There is, I'm afraid, some inherent problems just with liberalism. Although I love it, and you undoubtedly love it, I mean, that's why we're here, we need to be a bit more circumspect about its pitfalls. Liberalism, whether in political or religious forms, begins with an affirmation of individual liberty. No government, no religious hierarchy has the right to interfere with the human rights of an individual or prescribe a required set of beliefs. This smacks of the liberty pursued by our founding fathers who, and you can look it up and fact check this, were liberal in both the political and religious sense. It meant freedom from, first of all, British monarchy, where each person was free to pursue individual happiness. It meant freedom from religious orthodoxy, as the founding fathers were indeed Unitarians and Universalists, deists, agnostics, and liberal Christians, liberal theists, eager to ensure the separation of church and state. Now this is good. This is a kind of freedom from which allowed us and to work together to oppose the Jim Crow laws and to offer support to women in their struggle to be free in a dominant male society, and also to affirm the civil and human rights of marriage equality. Religiously, this understanding of liberalism is the source of our Unitarian vaunted creedlessness. Oh, we love our creedlessness. Freedom from religion, or freedom of religion, freedom of belief. That's our rallying cry. And every historical effort in Unitarianism to formulate some homogeneity in the belief system or dogma has failed miserably. The problem arises when liberalism is asked to formulate a vision of what a society or what a religion will look like in the absence of political or religious constraints. To be more specific, what is there beyond all your chatter? What is there beyond all this rhetoric about freedom, freedom from? You know, we've nailed down in our literature, in our liturgy, we have nailed down freedom from. But how are we doing on the other side of the equation, which calls for a freedom to, a freedom for? So liberalism provides us with a great method towards a goal. You know, we got to be free. Freedom from is the way to get there, from point A to point B. But the substance of that goal is poorly articulated. Once again, yes, we're free, but we're free to accomplish what? I think we got a glimpse of this dilemma in the Arab Spring, where the virtue of freedom, a release from the dictators of the past, rejected the old but had no idea really of what the new would look like. They really didn't know. It was just freedom from the past. The Great Society, built by liberal Democrats, offered individuals the chance to pursue individual happiness like never before, but there was no vision offered of what this good society would look like. I mean, let's be honest, we could never reach agreement. That's why Democrats always seem in such disarray. They speak as individuals and they speak their own minds freely. Republicans, in case you haven't noticed, easily conform to one voice, one message, one prescription. Now, what I'm trying to say here is captured very simply in Fred Hirsch's book, Social Limits to Growth. Here's his example of liberals failing to work together to produce a desired result. So I want all of you to imagine you're standing in a crowd watching a parade. Because you can't see very well, you get up on your tiptoes. And when you do that, you block someone behind you who in turn must stand on his or her tiptoes. The result is, before too long, nobody can see any more clearly than they could in the first place. And in addition, everyone is exhausted from standing on their tiptoes. Now, the solution which traditional liberalism can offer in this situation is the assurance that no one can force you to stand in any particular place, that everybody has as much right as the next person to see the parade. You have freedom from any constraints that someone may want to impose upon you as to where you stand. Well, that's great. But does it really help formulate a solution? Where liberalism falls down is that the solution to the problem requires a group solution which will benefit everyone. And even in this simple example, it's no longer about the individual. If one person gets down off of his or her tiptoes, she's worse off than everyone else. Only if the group agrees that the shorter people should stand in the front, and everyone agrees to refrain from standing on tiptoes, only then can a satisfactory solution be found. So Unitarians claim you can believe anything you want about things religious, and that's just fine. But do we really want to narrow our mission simply to offering people a freedom from? Here you're free from the constraints of doctrine? Essentially, we're telling people they can stand anywhere they want in the crowd, watching the parade. But is this sufficient if we want to address the issues that are so pressing in this second decade of the 21st century? Global warming, multiculturalism, population migration, consumerism. In other words, do we, Unitarian Universalists, the liberal community, actually offer a vision of what the moral community could look like? Is it just about freedom from? Are we able to say, hey, here's the solution, or at least this is what it's supposed to look like? Instead, we seem to say, enter our doors and be free. But what do we offer people in terms of a freedom to? Former UUA President Bill Schultz gets to the nub of the problem when he writes, without a prophetic call to the moral community, a liberal faith can hardly counter an excessively lavish lifestyle. For if the one who dies with the most toys wins, then materialism is the meaning of life. And without a spiritual alternative, there is no reason to give it up. So let me add that unless we understand Unitarianism as something more than creedlessness, we'll continue our downward slide until our own extinction. I have this horrible image of, a couple of years out, somebody will claim, there are still 5 Unitarians left somewhere on Beacon Street in Boston, and the 20-something crowd and 30-something crowd have many compelling things to occupy their lives. They don't need Unitarian Universalism to help them become free. What do we offer to those seeking something more substantive? Well, I suggest that we begin with a vision of what that good life really looks like, and underscore that to which we must, as a church, be committed. We must figure out what it is that binds us to one another and how we understand the common human condition. How do we make the spiritual life more abundant? I really don't want to sound grim about this. It's certainly there, on the radar, the proverbial radar. The numbers are going down. But I think it's not only the institutional church that has to present the congregations, the new people who come through our doors with some clear idea of what it is we are striving towards. Yeah, isn't it wonderful to be free of all that old stuff? But what are we going to do with it that is positive, that can produce a good life? One of the difficulties, or one of the real issues among Unitarian Universalists themselves, is that they really see going to a free liberal church, and I mean this, they see it as a pastime. There's really no big discipline required. There's really no big commitment required. It sounds so wonderful, our first principle, to affirm the inherent worth of all people. The inherent worth and dignity of all people. That's great. But I can take that thought with me to hiking the Wasatch or to the golf course or play a round of tennis. I can still feel good about affirming the worth and dignity of all people. And so it becomes a pastime. Should I tend the garden this morning or go to the Unitarian Church? And so I think there's a dual responsibility amongst the people in the congregations and the institution itself to really work together and to take this very seriously. That in fact, we are a serious house on serious earth. And so I really want to end once again to just kind of remind you of what I thought was this wonderful image from our reading this morning, Philip Larkin's poem, Church Going. A young man grows indifferent to religion. I think we can identify with that. And he just happens to wander into a medieval church somewhere on 13th East and 600 South. Goes in and does a quick look around. And this young man finally gets it. There is something that follows one's disbelief. And he recognizes the old church as a serious house on serious earth. And then he mentions all the compelling reasons why people must have come to this church and the surprising hunger in oneself to become more serious. Because, that's why they gravitated to this church. It was a place in which to grow wise. So let's hold on to that image, both our church as an institution joined with our sister churches across the country, and also all the members and friends of this congregation and across the land. We live on a very serious earth. This has to be a serious house, or someday it will not be a house at all.